Welcome back to another volume of truly disturbing tales from Reddit. Today we're going to be narrating 3 new unsettling stories, taken directly from the platform. I encourage you all to sit back, grab a snack, and enjoy these terrifying personal accounts. Now, without any further delay, let's jump right in. This story took place when I was 18. I was driving home late one night in less than stellar conditions. It was snowy, and while I'd struggled to call it a blizzard, it certainly felt like it in the moment. I couldn't see very well, so I decided to pull over and wipe my headlights, taillights, and any snow that had amassed on my windshield. As I'm doing this, I hear the crunch of snow from behind me. I turn and I see this guy running towards me, yelling at me all the while. He catches up to my car and asks if he can get a ride to the bus station. But the thing is that buses don't operate this late at night in my area, and I knew this. My heart immediately began racing in this situation. I'm too polite for my own good. It's snowing and I generally feel bad for the guy, but luckily I'm smart enough to know that something was up. I told him, "Oh, I'm not going in that direction. Sorry." He was so adamant about me taking him though, saying it's not far. He just really needed to catch a bus into so-and-so town, and that his mom needed him home. Please, could I help him out? I told him no, sorry, I really couldn't, and I needed to get going, as I ran back to the driver's side of my car. I took off immediately, just staring at him through my rearview mirror. He watches me for a moment as I inch down the road, and then he runs back in the same direction that he came from, getting into the passenger side of a van. All those stories you hear about creepy vans, and here I am in the midst of one. I'm thinking this can't be real. The van begins driving in my direction, and at that point I turn onto a busy road. Well, as busy as one can be that late at night. To my relief, that van didn't make the same turn as I did. I drove the rest of the way home terrified that night, peeking in my rearview mirror the entire way. I never drove that late at night again, let alone pull over in some dark neighborhood. I'm positive that something was going to go down that night if I decided to give him a ride. Why did he not just grab me? I still don't know, although I get shivers just thinking about it. Have you ever gotten the feeling that you've run into pure evil? Like you've met a real wolf in sheep's clothing? Someone that appears outwardly normal until they open their mouth and you realize that's far from the case. I, a 25-year-old female, was waiting for my at-the-time boyfriend to finish work. He worked at a pub in our city as a chef. I would finish work earlier than him and have a drink and sometimes talk to the locals who frequented that bar. One day, I was outside on the balcony having a cigarette, and this guy came out and asked if he could join me. He seemed as normal as could be. Normal clothing, tidy hair. You could walk past him in the street and not notice him one bit. I said sure and handed him a lighter. All seemed normal. I felt safe as the balcony had a lot of people sitting around drinking as well. Conversation was typical. He asked what I did. I asked what he did. He was an orderly at the hospital. He randomly said something like, "Don't you just wish the balcony would collapse and everyone fall and get crushed?" I was absolutely shocked. I laughed a little out of uncomfortability, but I thought that maybe he had a very dark sense of humor. I tried to change the subject and started asking about his work. I remember looking around for my then boyfriend. He wasn't finished yet, but I hoped that he was. Asking about that was a mistake. He told me that he would often go to the rooms where people were in long-term comas and mess with them. To be honest, I thought he was just reusing a storyline from the Kill Bill movie. But the way he talked about it, and his eyes went weird. It was like he was excited to tell someone. His eyes were wild when he spoke. He had the creepiest smile when he started talking about it and staring off while rambling about wanting to kill one of them in their coma. At this point, I freak out, jump up and excuse myself, saying that I need to go to the bathroom. I found one of the bouncers and had this man removed. As he was being taken out, I was standing at the door watching to make sure that he left. He started screeching and pointing at me over the mountain of a man bouncer who was almost carrying him out at this point. He was saying, "You laughed. When the balcony collapsed, you laughed. You're in on this too. It's your fault." I felt gross and dirty after this and tried to block it out of my memory. I should have said something to someone, but I never did. I didn't even tell my boyfriend. I just wanted this man and his crazy eyes to disappear. This all happened a handful of years ago. We had a transfer come on the team from another department within our company. He was nearly completely deaf, meaning he could hear really, really loud noises, but nothing else. He did quite well speaking out loud, and he read lips to understand what was being said to him. No big deal. His addition simply required one easy adjustment of making sure that you faced him while talking, and two, that only one person spoke at a time. He was a decent team member in the beginning, but after a while, began making comments to me and the only other female on the team. Things like, "Why haven't you made the coffee yet?" and just other stupid old school quote jokes that made fun of women. My role gave him instructions on customer requests and needs. He would often simply not follow the instructions, and I would get calls from the customers complaining. Just as often, this meant that I had to let him know that he had to go back and fix the work, so it matched the original request. Afterwards, he would storm into my office and yell at me as if his inability to read and follow instructions was my fault. I got tired of it and said, "Do your job right the first time, and there wouldn't be any complaints." This, of course, didn't go over well with him. His anger was unnerving. I got the feeling it wasn't going to stop there either. In the following weeks, he would intentionally block doorways I would be trying to go through. One time, I was in the other female worker's small office, and he blocked the entire doorway. Stood there and smiled this super creepy smile as if he was saying, "What are you going to do about it?" I refused to touch him to try and push past him. The other lady kept looking at me like she was beyond uncomfortable as well. It was like we read each other's minds and we kept having our own conversation about something work-related as we ignored him. After several minutes of this, he finally left. Another time I had to go to the far back of the warehouse to organize some stuff in the room. I remember going in and thinking, okay, there are 2 cameras and they can see this main hallway, but not between the shelving units. I had this uneasy feeling that he would emerge while I was back there. Sure enough, a few minutes later, he came barging in the room and came right at me. I had already been on high alert, so I quickly exited the other door in the room and booked it back to where the rest of the team was. I pulled up the security cameras to see if he had a reason to be in there, just to see him pacing in the room for a few moments after I bolted, before he left as well. He clearly had no reason to be in there at that exact moment that I was. I shared this with a male coworker friend, and he said he would go back with me to any of the spaces away from the main team areas. I had to get my work done, but I didn't trust that I could do it without this angry guy finding me. Anytime we would make comments about his anger or demeaning jokes, the managers would say, "Oh, maybe he didn't understand because you talk too fast." Or maybe it's just a big misunderstanding, as if having a disability means you can't also be a disgusting human being. Not too long after that, I heard from a teammate that this angry guy had grabbed the other female's upper thigh, literally right below her private area, squeezed and said, "Does this make you uncomfortable?" and then laughed. A few teammates witnessed it but didn't know what to do, as the other woman worker froze up. I immediately went to HR and told them everything he had been doing to intimidate, belittle, trap, and of course, sexually harass. He was fired the very next day. When they escorted him out, he yelled, "This is retaliation." HR asked me what I would make of that comment, and all I could think was it had to do with me standing my ground with him. I was so scared that he might show back up at the office unexpectedly. I told my family what he looked like, his tattoos, the car he drove, anything that would identify him since they had never met him. I blocked him from every social media platform as well. After he was let go, other females came forward and shared the things that he said or did to them too. They had told managers, but they had dismissed it because the guy is deaf and they didn't want to deal with any lawsuits. As much as I hate what he did to my coworker, I'm grateful it gave that final boost to get him fired. Hope I never run into that creep ever again.